Being mindful of your expenses is a critical responsibility for a franchisee. However, that alone cannot drive your long-term success if you're building a multi-unit enterprise. What happens is if you focus 100% only on cost control, you're going to end up striving for perfection in an area that really you may not be able to ever achieve perfection, but that will then have you paralyzed, not only not being able to move forward on a strategic thinking in your business, but will not allow you to grow and achieve the true success that you actually want as a multi-unit franchisee. The reality is that every franchise brand has a proven financial model. We call it unit economics. And so there are certain things that you need to accept and understand about your business and the brand that you are invested in so that you can truly make the most out of it and be successful as a top performing franchisee. So in today's show, I'm going to share with you what are the things that you need to do to be able to succeed as a multi-unit franchisee beyond the cost control of your business. Because if you focus too much in your cost control, then you will not pursue the financial success that you want in your business. So I'm going to share with you 5 things that you need to do to be able to do that. The first one is, like I mentioned, you need to understand your brand unit economics. You need to understand what it is that is possible, financially speaking, from the brand that you invested in. And every brand is different. So, understanding what it is and knowing how to maximize it is actually the first step that you need to know and do and take for you to be a successful franchisee. And so, what does that mean? That means that every brand, unit economics, has certain average targets based on the experience that they have had in the years of their existence. So when you have a brand, you will know what is the average revenue for that brand. You will know what is the average labor cost for that brand. You will know what is the average cost of goods for that brand. You will know what is the average cost of maintenance, etc. You will be able to determine what is the average unit economics for that particular brand, and that is the reality within which you need to operate as a base. And so, where do you find that information? Which is the next step, is you need to find out how you're performing against those. But the way that you know that is, first of all, learn what those are. And you will get that either from the FDD of the franchise or from fellow franchisees to find out, what are those numbers? What are the basic unit economics of the franchise model? And then you need to find out where you are against that. That's number 2. Find out where you are against those standards. How are you performing against that average? Are you better than the average? Are you right at the average? Or are you below average? And you might actually have to go line by line on each and every one of these numbers, financial numbers, to understand where you are, because you might be ahead on sales but behind on labor, or ahead of product costs but behind on labor, etc. You need to know where you are compared to the average. You can look at, like I mentioned, compare yourself to other franchisees and find out how they're doing, because at the end of the day, they are managing a brand just like yours. They're in different locations, but it's still the same brand and the same business model and the same unit economics that they're working with. Then compare yourself against other franchisees and compare your various units, because different units operate in different ways. So you need to be able to understand where you are in each of your units and as a whole against those basic standards as a baseline. Then you go to the step number 3 for you to be able to maximize the profitability of your business. And that is, you need to define a clear target on each and every one of these expense line items. And again, we're still working on expenses here, right? But this is the steps that you have to take to be able to then say, okay, I've done what I have, what I can do with expenses. Let me move on to the next step. So still within expenses, define what are those targets that you need to hit on each and every one of them. And you need to define smart targets. So either they're going to be brand or franchisor provided theoreticals or ideals, or you're going to have to define what those theoretical or ideals should be for each and every one of those line items. So if you have the theoreticals, and there might be some areas in which you might not have ideal or theoretical costs, like for example, a labor cost, but at least that way, if you have an idea of how other franchises are performing, then you will know where you sort of need to be. And you need to really also understand how each of those line items work based on volume, based on, the different situations in which each of your units and businesses are in. And what I'm talking about, for example, when it comes to labor, a unit will be different from another unit because the average hourly rate, for example, is different from unit to unit. There's a lot of intricacies that you need to learn and understand in all of these financial line items. Once you have that, once you already kind of know what the brand standards are, now you know where you are against those standards. Now you need to define, the third step is you define your targets in each of each of those expense line items, and that is what you do to focus for your team to focus on. That is what you have your team train and coach on what are the critical drivers for each one and every one of those line items, so that they can do the actions that they need, so that they can maximize, or should I say minimize, the waste in each of those line items. And then from then on, manage and expect results. Now, obviously, and that's an ongoing business. So once you have done all these steps and your team is already doing a good job, obviously they might not be perfect. And that is why overseeing these activities, overseeing this coaching and training to keep, focusing on those critical drivers to improve those results is what you can do to address the cost issues, right? But remember that this session is all about how, saving, you cannot save yourself for success. Here is where the last step of savings come from. If you actually want to achieve a multi-unit success in financial and time freedom in your business, once you reach this point, now your team should manage against that information ongoingly. And there's something that is, totally out of hand, then you obviously get involved and focus, assuming you have unit managers and even district managers to manage the day-to-day operations. But here's when you go to the fourth step for you to be able to achieve that long-term success as a multi-unit franchisee. And that is that you need to now focus on sales and revenue, because there's only so much that you can save yourself. There's going to come a point in which you continue to just focus on savings to try to achieve that perfection on cost controls. Then you're going to leave a lot of money on the table by not focusing on your revenue, on your sales. So here's where you need to look at, how can I bring more revenue to the top line, and really find out who are your top performing franchisees in your brand. What are their sales? Like, if you know that you are behind them, then you need to learn from them. What are they doing to be able to be, have the top sales in the brand? Whatever they can do, you should be able to do to a certain extent, unless it's something that is really special, like maybe an airport unit. But if that's not the case, if they are in a location similar to yours, demographics similar to yours, there is something that they're doing that is increasing the revenue. Because at some point in time, you're going to get to that cost savings that is the maximum that you can get without hurting your business, your people, your customer service. And at that point, that is the limit. But then you can then focus on sales, so that as you bring in more revenue, you're increasing your profits on your unit. You can look at, that's when you need to spend the time on focusing on what are your revenue channels. And I'm talking about, if you have a food service, drive-through, counter, dining, takeout, delivery. Like, what are those channels, and how can I improve each and every one of those channels so that you can maximize your revenue? I remember that when I first started with Domino's Pizza 30 years ago, our average sales was like $10,000 per store per unit per week. And I'm finding out right now the average Domino's Pizza is $20,000 to $30,000 per store per unit. And that's because they have been able to continue to focus on revenue, maximizing those channels that are coming into the business, takeout, delivery, of course, dining. They expanded into dining now. But the only way that you can get that revenue is by actually focusing on sales and not just spending your time trying to save every penny. Now, don't get me wrong. I always say that our business is a pennies business, but you have to set the standards, set the steps, and then let your team do the job that they need to do. And then all you do is follow up, but now focus on sales and revenue so that you can increase the revenue coming in, so that means that you can increase the bottom line to your unit. So that is the fourth step. Now, the fifth step, and here is where I really want you to understand that if you don't get to this fifth step, that you're never going to get into that true multi-unit enterprise that is really going to make the difference for you in achieving your financial goals. And that is, once you have achieved a certain level of cost control in your units, and you now are focusing on growing your revenue day in and day out, the only way that you're truly going to be able to multiply and exponentially grow your profits is by opening more units. Multiply your success by growing the units that you have. Because if you get a store, a unit, a franchise unit that might be making you, $55,000 a year in net profit, take home, etc. If you spend all your effort and all your time into cost control, maybe the most that you can do is get to $65,000, $75,000 of profitability out of the one unit. But if you just don't spend as much focus and attention on just that, which is still important, but not 100%, if instead of doing that, you focus on opening another unit, now you might have another $55,000 profit unit. And now you're doubled your profit. Then you did not increase it by 30, 40%, assuming you can even achieve that in your one unit, but now you have doubled it. And this is the value of not focusing yourself in just cost savings. You cannot save yourself for success. So obviously, to be able to get to this point, you have to have systems in place. That's what we call the business management systems. The systems for you to understand what your costs are, understand what the smart targets are, how to define them, how to then train and coach them, how to make sure that the units and the managers and the teams are doing what they need to do to control those expenses. Systems to then have local store marketing to then focus on the revenue, how to manage your enterprise local store marketing plan, and be able to make sure that you have sales increases year over year. And then on top of that, how can you then grow and multiply your success by opening more units in a successful, confident, and consistent way, so that you can truly achieve that multiplication of profitability. All these requires business management systems. But at least you have an idea of what the process is and why you should not so be focused on cost control. It is important, absolutely. But once you achieve a certain level of rhythm and success, it is important that you look at the big picture and keep moving in that process of being able to go from your cost controls to your revenue increases to then multiply your profitability by opening more units. Now, if this is something that you need to do, but you don't have the systems to be able to make all of these things happen, I would like to invite you to one of our workshops. We have a multi-unit mastery masterclass where we teach all of the systems, how to get from point A to point B to point C, so that you can eventually become a multi-unit successful franchisee. If this is of interest to you, you can go to multiunitmasterclass.com, register for the next masterclass. We teach it approximately once per quarter, and this is a free workshop, very interactive, in which we take you step by step on how you can achieve all of these roles and responsibilities of a franchisee and your team, so that you can go from one unit to 2 units to 3 units, not only by having great cost controls, great process for you to increase your revenue, but then open more units so that you can multiply your success. So if that's something that interests you, I hope I see you in the next masterclass, and we can teach you all of this information free of charge, so that you can have the knowledge, the tools, and the resources to be successful. At the end of the day, that is what the American Franchise Academy focuses on. That's what we're here for, to be able to protect the American dream of business ownership through franchising. That's what we want to do for you and for all the franchisees out there that need this information. So thank you for being with me in this show, and we'll see you in the next show, same time, same place, so that we can give you more information so that you can be successful. Thank you, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.